bumps, and who knows what they were. And it was throughout. But mostly like on the arm area and on the head area.
And was this being wearing any clothes?
No, you could tell that. And here are some renditions of drawings that I made of the photographs that I saw in Okinawa. And what you have here is a desert and the alien entity. Here's the guy in the jeans and the cowboy boots. Here's the truck, and here's the entity in the truck looking out. And in the actual photograph, though, you could barely make him out because of the angle of the sun and what it was doing from the slats to him. So I had to actually have this pointed out to me. This is what we called photograph number 1. This is another rendition. This is at the aircraft hangar. Okay. Pretty much, this is really a rendition because of the angle and all. I really am not an artist, okay, so I couldn't really draw it to the right angle. But over here is the military man in his khaki pants, his brown shoes, and this is the front of the aircraft hangar. This is the opening here. And I tried to, what really stood out for me in this photograph was the angle of the slants from the panes of the windows from the hangar, of the style of hangar that it was. Mm-hmm. And here's the alien that's mostly intact, and next to him, or it, is the other alien that was crumpling in a fetal position, and most of its side had been badly damaged. And here's the alien that's next to it, and I tried to make a rendition here of the crumpling and everything, but I didn't do a good job really. But most of its head, as I recall, was badly damaged either through charring of some sort or other damage.
And burned.
Or burned, yeah. Okay. And here's another rendition. Now in the photograph, this is of course all black, okay? But what you're seeing is where the flash took the photograph of what you can see here, and it's a gurney in an elongated fashion, okay? And the alien entity laying on top of the gurney. And there you have it. And evidently in the same space, they took a close-up of the alien's head from the neck on up with the same black background. And here it is, as I best recall. And I tried to get as best to make it look as real as I could by not giving too much detail with the eyes. But the eyes, the sockets are very almond-shaped, and they're fatter up here and they skinny down, okay? They're fatter here and they skinny down. And the blotting I'm trying to describe here, okay, looks sort of, well, veiny, I guess you could say, or just bumps. And that was the best I could describe it here.
And this reminded you of reptilian?
Yeah, you could tell that it was sort of reptilian-ish, but at the same time, no, you really couldn't because of the black and white photo, okay? I do recall that its neck was, in comparison to its head, really this skinny, and it had a lot of wrinkles.
As if it were old?
No, as if it was just the way it was, the way it was.
But did that remind you also of a reptile?
Mm-hmm, yeah. I tried to make a description of how long its fingers are and in comparison to its wrist. Mm-hmm. This is a better drawing, okay, of its palm in this fashion, all right, without a thumb. If it had a thumb, it was this sort of a nib-looking thing here. And it did have these slanted tip fingertips, and on the tips, you could tell it was sort of a roundness, or what I call a suction cup. Linda, there is nothing on this earth that we know of that looks anything like this. It's not a human being. I'm telling you straight up. It wasn't a monkey. It wasn't an animal of any kind. It was like nothing that I had ever seen, and that's all I could say. It was definitely not a human. It was definitely not an animal that we know of.
What emotion did you feel?
I was in shock. I mean, what can I say? I mean, I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't even accept it at the time. It took hours for me to even accept what I had saw. Even with a guy that was older than me that was telling me, look at what you're looking at here, okay? These were not fakes. This was real stuff. I was overwhelmed.
Tom Shepard and his two Navy colleagues, Craig Howard and Robert Terman, thought that they had been able to enter the classified vault without anyone finding out. But on Monday, after that 1976 Thanksgiving weekend, the three men were summoned by a very angry Chief James Seeley. Tom saw the other two men had to put on their dress uniforms for some kind of punishment, and he was kept in office detention for several hours. But Thomas Shepard was never asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement swearing him to secrecy for the rest of his life. 2 weeks later, Captain Seeley ordered Tom Shepard, Robert Terman, and Craig Howard to drive with him to a dentist at Kadena Air Force Base about an hour from White Beach. Tom was put to sleep, and he never was told what the dentist did. He thinks the other two men were treated the same way, but his Navy records mysteriously never included the Kadena Air Force Base dentist visit. I asked Tom if the dentist might have implanted monitoring devices in their teeth. Tom said that a few years later he learned that was possible to do and figured that is what had been done because the tooth had bothered him after the Okinawa dentist visit was finally pulled in the 1990s by a civilian dentist in the United States who asked, "When did you do intelligence work?" Tom said he had never done intelligence work, but he did not tell the dentist about what had happened in Okinawa. Several months after the three men were taken to the Kadena Air Force Base dentist, Tom finally learned more from Craig Howard that the vault photos and files were from a UFO crash near Roswell, New Mexico in the late 1940s.
It was probably a couple of months after the incident that I finally came up to Howard and I said, okay, what was all that? And tell me what you know about what we saw. And he told me about Roswell. And he said that, he said two things really. He said that he had heard of Roswell before, and that he did see Roswell in those documents. And that flying saucers, or whatever you wanted to call them at the time, did crash in New Mexico in the 40s, and that the government, or the military, whatever you want to call it, okay, recovered the bodies, and we've been hiding them ever since. I eventually transferred in March of '78. Topin got accepted for a naval officer candidate school program, and Howard transferred sometime in '77. And I'll never forget that day either.
What happened?
Well, he had made second class, which was E5, okay? And I thought he was doing really good. And there at the last minute, or within weeks of having to have gotten to re-enlist, he backed out. So I came up to him on the day he was leaving. He was in his uniform. And I said, Howard, you know, what gives, man? You know, life is good. You made second class. Why are you getting out? And he said, Tom, I just can't do it no more. And I said, does it have anything to do with, and he said, the vault, you know, what we saw in that? And he looked at me, and he got beet red. And he was shaking his finger at me, and he said, don't you ever bring that up to me again. And that was the last thing I ever heard from him. And I haven't seen him in over 30 years now.
Did you take it from that comment that he had been punished because of the vault incident?
I believe that, well, it's either one of two things. I think they jacked with him myself. I think they gave him threats. But it could have been just that he knew a truth, and it wasn't going to go anywhere. And he didn't like that.
Were you asked to sign any kind of a non-disclosure agreement?
No, never. Let's jump ahead to 1989. Unsolved Mysteries comes on TV, and it was a popular show then. And one night, they played, Robert Stack hosting, the Roswell incident. And I had no idea at the time that this was in books or had already been talked about. I was literally blown away. And I thought to myself, well, you know, if national TV is going to come out and blast it all over the place, what's to stop me? So at the time, I worked at a 3-star command there in Norfolk. It was ComNav Airland. And I worked for the operations department. It's Code 30, and one of the people in Code 30 was a man named Captain Wood. And he had a person that worked for him who was a lieutenant commander, and I don't remember his last name. But one day, it was shortly after this was played on TV, the Roswell incident on Unsolved Mysteries, the subject of ETs came up, and we were just talking, and even though I had been, well, I'd run into a lot of trouble in other commands, not a lot of trouble, but, well, somewhat anyway, okay? We could get into that. But I had opened my mouth before, okay? And I was tired of keeping it closed. So I told this lieutenant commander who worked for Captain Wood what I knew, and I told him the whole Okinawa story, and the file, and the photos, and the whole thing. And I thought the guy was going to have a heart attack. He went into shock. He got really angry. He wanted to tape record me. He started making threats on me. We got to sort of a heated argument. And he said that he was going to have to tell Captain Wood about this. So I said, fine, tell him. So a couple hours later, Captain Wood calls me in his office. He says, sit down. Heard you did some talking today. And I said, yes, sir, I sure did. You want to tell me what you told Lieutenant Commander down there? All right. So I told him the whole Okinawa story. And he said, all right. I'm pretty convinced that you saw what you saw. But just so you know, we don't call them aliens. I said, we don't? No. We call them EBEs, for extraterrestrial biological entities. I said, all right, well, that makes sense. Then we had a conversation, and it was basically like this. I asked him why we had kept this under wraps for all these years, and what did it have to do with the military and the whole thing. And he gave me some descriptions about it. He said that since that period of time, and on up till, you know, present day, that
You're talking about the 40s to 1990?
yeah, the 40s to 1990.
Right.
Okay. That they had been using this, and it was all for good reasons.
They had been using what?
Well, you know, I've never really understood that either. They've been using the technology that the aliens gave them, or they've been using the crashed vehicles. Even though he said that, okay, it was just sort of inference that, yeah, the whole thing that we recovered, okay? So that's how I took it.
That our government was using?
Yes, what we had recovered.
For
Purposes of military advantage. I asked him if the president knew, and he said, can't go there. I asked him how this might have an effect on society and religion. And basically the whole thing was people couldn't handle it. That there'd be too much shock. And we've got to maintain this under wraps. It could be disruptive to society. It could be disruptive to the Bible. And so, you know, I asked him, I said, well, you know, look, yeah, you have the Bible, okay, but it's not like as if people aren't going to, people are going to just quit believing in Jesus or anything, okay? Come on. He said, no, but, this could open the door to several other things in the Bible that, we wouldn't want and religions to have to deal with, okay? It could just open a door to many things that would be so disruptive, we can't go there. So you just need to keep this under wraps. You're not in trouble or anything, okay? And that's it. And if you say that we had this conversation, you can, it didn't happen. So if you know what's good for you, you're going to keep this under wraps. You want to make chief, don't you? I said, yeah. All right, well, let's play ball by the rules then.
Did you ask him when the public and the media would be allowed to know?
No, probably never.
Is that what he said?
That's what he said. Probably never.
But that means the planet is living in a huge lie.
Yes, of course it does. Especially when you accept that when you're in the military. You accept that because you're working with secret material all the time. And you understand that the United States maintains military advantage over our enemies. And you accept that. That's an okay answer for a military guy.
But isn't that an incredible answer? Probably never, that the world would be kept in the dark forever?
We went there, and I respectfully tried to argue with him. I said, yes, when we recovered the aliens, okay, that was the 1940s. That's completely different from today. This is the 90s, okay? People would be able to handle it. And he said, oh yeah, you think so? I said, well, could you handle it? No. Did it scare you? Yeah. Would it be old news in 2 weeks? I don't know.
How does that make you feel as an American?
Oh, that's a big question. How does that make me feel as an American? I think the public should be given the truth. And that's all there is to it. Enough is enough. For years, I've understood the need for secrecy, but I can't accept it no more. Not for this. Not to arrogantly and outlandishly just come right out with books and in media to say Roswell didn't happen. It hurts.
Thomas Coleman Shepard was honorably discharged from active duty as an E-7 Chief Petty Officer, Chief Yeoman in the U.S. Navy on November 30th, 1995, after 20 years of service. And I hope today, on this 70th commemoration of a week in July of 1947, when something at least made public headlines, even though I'm convinced that the government of the United States knew all the way back to 1941 that they were dealing with technologies and with entities that were called an alien presence and celestial beings and celestial craft. And that means that for 6 years prior to the week of July 1947, our government had been studying secretly. Robert Oppenheimer had a neutronic propulsion device that they had gathered at Cape Girardeau for the development in the Manhattan Project of the atomic bomb. I hope from this week going forward in this year of 2017 that Thomas Coleman Shepard and all of the military people that I have talked to and seen cry in front of me in their frustration and their anger that something so big as an alien presence that is not human, from wherever it comes or lives on this planet, with technologies that might help humans, has been kept a secret, not only in the 21st century or the 20th century, but apparently going back 5,000 years. And it's my hope, along with Thomas Coleman Shepard and all of these angry, sad, frustrated military men who know the truth, that this year, and no later than next, that around this planet will be those 3-inch headlines: we are not alone in this universe. We never have been. And we have to stop living on a concocted planet. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Let's hope. Let's go for truth. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. And for those who want to ask me questions, I am happy to hang around for a few minutes. And then I have a few books with me, especially the Glimpses Volume 2 that has all of the bismuth-magnesium research in it. I have some with me. So whether between today or tomorrow morning before the panel, maybe we can, you can go over that. So thank you. Chase, thank you.
Test. Ooh, sorry, there you go. Okay, guys. So it's dinner time. We're breaking for tonight. Big parade. Let's all try and make that parade. But remember that tomorrow we finish big. We finish proud. Richard Dolan starts off at 9 a.m. So be here early because we can't miss that one. There he is right there waving. So we have Richard in the morning. And then we have the full panel, and these guys are going to be answering questions. They're going to be here for you, all the speakers that were featured. And then, of course, there's an award ceremony and a place where autographs